And it is time to bring in our State House insiders. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. As this government shutdown lingers and the possibility of SNAP benefits disappearing this weekend, the Washington Post out with an editorial today calling for Democrats, Antoine, saying they need to stop holding the country hostage and they need to reopen the government. Again, this is the Washington Post editorial board with those remarks today. What's your reaction?
Not surprised by Jeff Bezos, Washington Post, calling for the government shutdown to end. What I am shocked about is that a very credible journalistic outlet does not understand that Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And whenever they wanted to pass anything since Donald Trump has taken office, and they've had the trifecta, they've been able to do so. And if the Republican majority, who control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, wanted to end the shutdown, one, the president would not be in Asia right now. Two, Johnson and Thune would be willing to sit down with Democratic leaders in order to try to negotiate a bipartisan pathway forward.
If you don't think that there's some sort of also discussions going on in Washington, D.C. in the background that we're not seeing, I think it's a little foolish, because this is not just people sitting around doing nothing. There are some major issues that are being addressed right now. But the timing on this is the important part, JR, because guess what's going to happen in November? Starting in November, we're going to actually start getting our Obamacare bills in, and we're going to find out really quickly how much our insurance rates are going to be going up, because they're predicting anywhere from 20 to 40% increases on the Affordable Care Act coverage that we see. Now, in South Carolina, that's not going to be an easy thing for most people to be able to swallow. When you put on top of that the fact that 260,000 South Carolinians are right now on SNAP benefits, and they're sitting there going, how am I going to make sure that my bills get paid? Because some folks already got a letter from their school districts this week saying you're going to need to be prepared because the SNAP funding that pays for your child's breakfast or lunch isn't going to be there right now. This is a place where it's time to stop bickering, but also recognize the fact that there are other factors going into play. And I think right now the Republicans are trying to figure out all they can to make sure that they are going to make a statement about the extreme cost of healthcare in America.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because 18.2 million Americans in places that Donald Trump won enjoy those ACA subsidies. 76% of those who own those subsidies are in states that Donald Trump won, like South Carolina. And when we talk about SNAP benefits, I know there's a certain perception about who gets SNAP benefits, but let me just tell you, 42 million Americans, 37% of those are white, 26% African American, 15% Latino, and so on. And these are working class people, not people sitting around doing nothing, who are receiving these benefits. And guess what? They're not all Democrats. They're Republicans, independents, and those who do not participate. 200 plus in South Carolina, an already red Republican poor state.
And that's a place where the governor did step up this past week and turn around and said, listen, we're going to have to call upon the business community to step up where the federal government is failing right now, and being able to come up with a plan for this. Now, there are bills that have been introduced, but the reality is they're playing a game of shuffle things around right now, folks. I mean, you understand, when you're at home, if the bills can't get paid and the things can't be done, you got to start making some decisions. And right now, it seems like the decisions are, we're just going to keep holding in this pattern until something begins to break. And they're trying to figure out what those break points are for both sides.
Antoine, let me mention this. We're at 13 votes right now. 13 votes have taken place in the Senate to reopen the government. How much longer do you think this is going to drag out?
Until Donald Trump decides that he wants to intervene and give a nod and a wink to the House and the Senate Republican majorities to do something about these ACA subsidies. There's no reason for us to be in a government shutdown, because Republicans knew at the beginning of the year they were going to expire. November 1st, SNAP benefits run out, but also that's when you're able to start to make choices about your healthcare. Notices have already gone out, Dave, about what healthcare prices would be without those subsidies. If you're paying $8,000 a year now, that's $24,000 to $32,000. So when Donald Trump decides he's going to intervene and convene the House, the Senate, and leadership from both sides to do something, I think that's when we'll get there. Until then, the government will be shut down.
Well, the other part about this, JR, is the fact that this continuing resolution, which is basically we're going to hold everything in place until it's time for us to figure out what we're going to do next, this CR was going to be ending because we've got another cliff that we're coming up to in a couple of weeks. We're going to hit the middle of November and they're going to have to be added all over again. So the question that I keep hearing coming out of Washington, D.C. is, are we just going to let these two things butt up against each other? And this may be going on until Christmas, which could make it the longest shutdown in American history.
All right. Antoine C. Wright, Dave Wilson, guys, as always, thank you so very much for your time.